Oh, hi. It's your boy, Harry Horror here from the Harry Horror Show on Twitch. Hello, welcome to the YouTube channel. It's good to see you again. Now this video is another video in our fundamental crime series where we break down some of the underlying bedrock principles that true crime itself sits upon. Tonight in particular, I want to take a look at eyewitness testimony. One of the most damning pieces of evidence in any case, whether it be true crime, paranormal occurrence, or weird event, is eyewitness testimony. What is an eyewitness? It's someone who saw an event happen themselves and can give testimony regarding it. Here's an example. When my wife follows me in her car, tracking me down to the nearest McDonald's where I make a late night McFlurry run, even though I swear I've been on a diet, and she sees me slurping that McFlurry, she knows. She was a first-person witness to my shame. Throughout history, eyewitnesses have been used to build cases, seal convictions, and testify in court to put bad guys away, trial after trial after trial. After all, who else would you believe if not someone who saw the event take place? They would know. They saw it with their own two eyes, right? Right? The answer may surprise you. Let's take a look at a famous true crime case where things went sideways with the eyewitness. Now, viewer discretion is going to be advised. The case revolves around a sexual assault that occurred. We're only going to talk about it in a clinical sense, but I didn't want you to be surprised or blindsided at all by it. Viewer discretion is advised, and I appreciate you taking the time. In 1984, 22-year-old college student Jennifer Thompson was asleep off campus in her single-person apartment complex. Outside her small ground-level apartment, a perpetrator snuck up, smashed the light bulb, and snuck his way into her apartment in that growing darkness. She couldn't have known that her phone line had been cut, couldn't have known in fact that anyone at all was inside of her apartment. She was sound asleep, but she stirred and saw the top of someone's head creep along the top of her bed, and she knew she was in trouble. What you suspect is about to happen is exactly what happened at the point of a knife. During the attack that followed, she knew she couldn't necessarily do anything to stop what was happening from happening. So instead, coolly, calmly, calculatedly, and remarkable considering what was happening there, she decides to get as good of a look as she can at the perpetrator. That way, she can turn him into the police and make sure this never happens to anyone again. She studies her assailant's body, studies his face, trying to find any sort of identifying marks, a tattoo, a mustache, any sort of scarring, or any sort of bizarre bodily feature. 30 minutes later, she's able to run away and contact police. He, in turn, this mysterious assailant, dashes off into the night, into someone else's apartment, and does the exact same thing, all before disappearing into the growing early morning hours. As morning rose, she began to work with the police to put together an artist's sketch of the offender. And based on this sketch, she was shown 6 different suspect photos, little Polaroids laid out in rows of 3 on the desk. She took 5 minutes agonizing over them, carefully looking at each man put together on the Polaroids. She equated to studying for the SAT, carefully deliberating as to which of these men was the assailant. She finally picked number 5, Ronald Cotton. And when Ronald Cotton was brought in with an array of other young men and put up in an official police lineup, she was able to pinpoint him immediately. Law enforcement said, hey, you picked the suspect from the photos and from the lineup. She was feeling really good about this pick. She had finally been able to take a look at a rapist square in the eye and point him out to law enforcement. The wheels of justice were turning, just as she expected they would. The catch? That awful, sinister catch? The real suspect's photo had not been included in the police lineup. She had fingered the wrong man. Ronald Cotton was brought before a judge, brought before a jury, and in court was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. Ron Cotton knew he was innocent. Despondent though, and without any other choice, he was sent to prison and was forced to adapt to a brand new world overnight. He was only 22. Just as he was getting settled into prison life, in walks a brand new inmate. His name was Bobby Poole, and he looked eerily familiar. Ron watched the newbie walk in, and something was bothering him. Where have I seen this man before? And then it hit Mr. Cotton like a bolt of lightning. That first sketch that Miss Thompson had made at the police station, which had led to the 6 photographs, which had led to the lineup, that original sketch, Bobby Poole looked almost identical to it. Just like when word gets out that the ice cream machine at McDonald's isn't working, word gets out inside the prison that Bobby has fessed up to his cellmate and admitted that he had done both rapes that evening. So Ron gets to work with an attorney to get a retrial going. His goal? To get Bobby Poole, the actual rapist, and Jennifer Thompson, the victim, in the same room. Not to be cruel, not to be malicious, but hoping that Miss Thompson, when she sees her real rapist in that room, will have the flashbulb of recognition and will be able to end this miscarriage of justice once and for all. The retrial date is set, 1987. Mr. Cotton is brought into the courtroom, Miss Thompson's brought into the courtroom, and Bobby Poole is brought in. Jennifer looks at Bobby Poole. She simply said, and I quote, "I have never seen him in my life. I have no idea who he is." Ron Cotton couldn't have asked for worse luck. He was found guilty again, and in true Vegas odd style was found double or nothing, given 2 life sentences this time. Decimation, despair. You can only imagine what was going through Ron Cotton's mind as he served out not 1, but 2 life sentences for a crime he didn't commit. And as the years trudged on and on, Mr. Cotton was losing all hope. And then hope came trickling into the prison in 1994 from an unlikely source: the O.J. Simpson trial. Ron Cotton was riveted by the trial, like most Americans were. I mean, hell, we did a stream about it, and it was a 3-parter and one of the best streams we've ever done. But he was fascinated by this case and was listening to it over a headset day after day after day, and one thing in particular stuck out to him. Not the glove don't fit, you must acquit. Not O.J. Simpson just being the world's most scummiest scumbag, but the phrase DNA evidence kept coming up. What is DNA evidence? I mean, is it something that I could use? He petitions his new lawyer, a criminal justice professor, and asks him about DNA evidence and if it's applicable in his case. The professor takes a quick look down at the police station for evidence. Sure enough, there is still viable DNA, 1/2 of a sperm cell. It's not even a cum, it's just a that's all that's left. If Ron Cotton submits his DNA and it matches that half of a sperm inside the DNA kit, he's done. It's over. But if Bobby Poole comes back as a match, Ron Cotton is a free man. It's one last game of Russian roulette, and Ron Cotton has nothing to lose. He takes that bet and sends in his DNA. DNA is collected from Bobby Poole too. The tests come back, and sure enough, Ronald Cotton is exonerated by the DNA. It does not match, it matches Bobby Poole. And after 11 years spent in the hoosgow for a crime he did not commit, Ronald Cotton is free to taste the delicious nectar of the McDonald's M&M Pieces McFlurry out with the rest of us free folk. But how could something like this happen? How could someone like Ron Cotton be just swept off the street at 22 and put in prison seemingly for the rest of his life based on false eyewitness testimony? How could Jennifer have picked the wrong photo out and then picked the wrong person in a lineup and not recognize the real rapist in the retrial in 1984? Even worse, how could she still not believe that Ron was innocent when he was exonerated in 1995? The simple answer is that all the McDonald's ice cream jokes I've been putting in this video are not accidental at all. They serve a higher, stupider metaphor. That eyewitness testimony is that Ronald McDonald's ice cream machine. That despite people trusting the fact that it will work, when they show up and it needs to work, many times they find it's tremendously flawed. One of the most obvious and easy to see flaws with eyewitness testimony is the fact that juries trust it almost to a fault. A jury has to ask themselves, this woman claims she saw her attacker. How can she be wrong? This man was 5 feet away from the gunman. How could he have not seen? There's a trust there. If anyone knows what happened, it was the person that was there. How could this person be wrong? That's where the second part comes in. Memory, like a McFlurry on a hot day, is a malleable, bending, changing thing. Memory has to be preserved. almost like the physical crime scene was. And there are a couple of how-tos. But before we take a look at how to preserve memory, I find it helpful to take a look as to how, in this particular case, the memory was changed. In Jennifer Thompson's case, memory contamination was rife almost from the start. And you have to understand, it's not her fault at all. She tried to be attentive, she tried to be aware of what was going on, but there were a lot of forces at work here that were very, very subtle and hard to pick up on. And with our hindsight being 2020, it's easy to see, but for her, the detectives working the case, it would be almost impossible to detect at first blush. When she was shown those 6 photos in the police station of potential suspects and didn't immediately recognize one of them, she took another 5 minutes to pick through which of these 6 men it had to be. Because if the police are showing her these photos, one of these men has to be it. Studies have shown that when recognition memory hits, it is almost immediate. It's the blink of an eye. You recognize something happening. You recognize a person, a jingle, the delicious savory taste of a McFlurry hitting your soft middle palate. If that snap of recognition isn't there, the memory molds to provide it. And that's exactly what happened. The longer she looked, she saw the sketch, she saw the men, and Ron Cotton was the closest. The slight angle to his nose, the way his eyebrows moved in sort of a surprised look. It sort of matched the sketch. That has to be the guy. Memory fills in the rest of the gaps. When they see that same person in the lineup and pick them out, it's now a beautiful click of, oh, there he is, and there he is again. I must have recognized correctly. Humans want to find a pattern, and when they see the same person showing up twice, that pattern recognition clicks. If a law enforcement officer says, hey, you picked the suspect in both the photo and in the lineup, that's triply damning. Now they think, 1, I picked them both right the first time. 2, the officer said, I picked the suspect. The suspect. He just said the suspect in the photo and the suspect in the lineup. I must be 3 times correct. At this point, it is almost impossible to scrape away the memory bias that's occurred. By the time she'd gone through the court system and gotten her conviction against Mr. Cotton, it wouldn't have mattered if Mr. Poole had walked up and done a dance in front of her. She wouldn't have recognized him. Memory had already filled in, covered up, and made sure that the confirmation in that police station matched the existing memory database. Phrased questions, too, can have a significant impact on memory contamination. Did Mr. Cotton say anything when he was assaulting you? Sounds like an interesting question. We want to know what he was saying. But it now puts in her mind, or in any victim's mind, oh, so we're acting on the assumption that I was assaulted by this person. It creates a foundation level of assumption that can mold memory. These sort of guiding questions and framing questions have been known in many cases to lead victims and lead eyewitnesses towards a conclusion they wouldn't have come by naturally on their own, had the questions been asked in a more neutral sense. If none of that even happened, there's the natural degradation of memory. I can't remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. I'm like that guy from 50 First Dates, 10-Second Tom. Even the sharpest eyewitness, their memory will fade as time goes on and the time towards trial gets closer and closer and closer. So what can be done with all this? You can't just throw eyewitness testimony out. It's not fair to the eyewitnesses. It's not fair to the victim. And this testimony is still valid. They still saw what happened and it still has valuable clues. So what do? We collect eyewitness testimony more effectively and in a more controlled environment. Again, keep the maxim that the mind is its own crime scene, and memory must be preserved just like the crime scene was, with its yellow tape and blood markers and cops sitting at the entrance eating donuts. Rather than show photos in a group, photos 1 through 6, photos 6 through 12, show photos one by one. If the recognition doesn't click, it doesn't click. Show one photo, and then another photo, and then another photo. By the way, the person administering this test and the person administering later lineup tests, they should not know who the suspects are. This should be a third person who's not involved at all in the investigation, so they can't accidentally provide confirmation. They simply go, do you think it's number 5? Okay, it's number 5. In turn, eyewitness and victim statements should be taken as soon as possible and written down in thorough detail to avoid memory degradation down the line. Neutral questions. What happened then? Who did you see? What did they look like? Don't add anything. Those neutral questions should be asked to help keep the memory line as clean as possible for testimony, both in that immediate statement and later in the courtroom. The stakes here are enormous. According to the Innocence Project, of the 375 exonerations that occurred due to DNA evidence, 69% of them 69% were from false eyewitness testimony. That's not very nice at all. As you can see, there's a lot at play. So please remember, when it comes to eyewitnesses, there's much more than meets the eye. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video and want to see more content like this, I stream live Monday through Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I talk true crime, tell true crime stories, debunk conspiracy theories, explore the paranormal, discuss weird topics, and I do it all live so I can field your chat questions and explore the conversation with you, take a look at your expertise, hear your parts of the story, and we all get to tell it together. If you enjoy the YouTube channel, leave a comment down below. Slap that subscription button like it's the Vind button on a McDonald's McFlurry ice cream machine. Hit that notification bell so you can get that ring-a-ling when it's time for some ice cream ding-a-ling. And please, 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 stay weird, y'all. Bye. All of this must be reenacted on the scene of the Mind Crime. CBS, contact me for rights to that show, Mind Crime, airing Sundays, 9 p.m. Eastern. Plucky YouTube streamer yells about ice cream and crime for 45 minutes with 2 commercial breaks.